I'll now go on to our next speaker, Dr. Umapati, who is going to be talking to us on another very interesting, very relevant talk, COVID-19 and neuro-ophthalmology. So we look forward to hear from you.
Okay, so thank you very much to everyone for inviting me to participate in this very prestigious forum. My main disclosure, in fact, it's the only disclosure, is that I'm not an expert in neuro-ophthalmology of COVID-19. But nevertheless, I'm going to share with you our experience that we gleaned when we did two nationwide surveys. One in 2020, in the first wave of COVID infections, when we looked nationally at the neurological complications of COVID. And then last year, when many of our patients were already vaccinated, we were looking at the neurological complications nationally of COVID vaccines. In Singapore, it is almost exclusively the mRNA vaccines. And then from these two surveys, we came across quite a number of interesting patients. We studied them in detail and gleaned some experience, which I'm going to share with you, particularly those with specific neuro-ophthalmological manifestations. But off the bat, I think I would want to give you a quick overview of what we saw when we did a national survey. As I mentioned, this was the first wave before the Delta wave. So at that time, we had about 50,000 COVID-19 patients, mostly young patients, and only about 40 patients who were defined to have neurological problems. We divided them into four big categories. In the CNS groups, there were 4 patients with encephalitis. 2 of them were acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, while the other 2 are classic encephalomyelitis. As you would expect, we saw quite a number of cerebrovascular disease, cerebrovenous thrombosis in quite a number of asymptomatic young patients, as well as strokes, and significantly in quite a few asymptomatic patients. With regards to peripheral nervous system manifestations, including oculomotor nerve palsies, we saw very few, and we also saw very little Guillain-Barré syndrome. Now, interestingly, we had 4 patients with dysautonomia, 3 of which had very prominent ocular symptoms, and I'll be describing them in detail. But specifically with regards to Guillain-Barré syndrome, we extended the study to do a nationwide survey of all the admissions for Guillain-Barré syndrome and compared them with the year before. And we proved that Guillain-Barré syndrome had halved during the period of COVID infection, and there was no correlation between COVID infection and Guillain-Barré syndrome admissions, which made us think that perhaps COVID-19 is not a very important antecedent infection for Guillain-Barré syndrome. Okay, I'm going to go on quickly to one of the patients who had encephalitis, who had very specific ocular and neuro-ophthalmological manifestations. He was a 59-year-old man, and this was in the first wave before vaccination, pre-morbidly very well, came in with COVID infections, and very soon he was intubated and needed to be in ICU for about 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, when he was weaned off his sedation, he didn't wake up, and that's when we were called. Now, I'm going to play some of the videos because they are very interesting eye features. Now, if you look at his eye movements, you'll see this conjugate deviation of his eyes downwards, and then slowly you'll be drifting towards one side. And then over a period of about a minute, we have timed it, it will slowly start moving very slowly, almost like a ping pong movement towards the opposite direction. And then after pausing for a few seconds, few minutes, it will start moving back again over a period of 1 minute. So this slow conjugate, almost ping pong like movements, we noted very prominently in this patient. And then very interestingly, if we were to do some vestibular simulation by head shaking, this movement became predominant, the downward movement became much more prominent. So in a few minutes, you'll see that I'll be shaking this patient's head quite vigorously, and you will see the downward movement becomes very prominent. It will start going down, very slow phase, almost like a dipping, but there's no fast phase associated with it, just a slow phase down, and then very slowly it starts coming up again. And then if you bear with me, if I move forward to somewhere around 145 and I'm shaking it again, and again, you'll see this very dramatic pulsion of the eyes conjugately downwards. And you will stay there for about 30 seconds to a minute and then slowly come up. And then, of course, you can see here he's extubated here around about the 30th day of illness. There was something very remarkable in his eyes. And that's where you can see it. The left, right ocular flutter that was very transient but persistent. Now, with that, we immediately thought this must be an inflammatory process. We went ahead, investigating for an inflammatory process. Okay, as you can see here, after a bit of shaking, you still see the pulsion that you talked about. And then at the end of it, you will see a little bit of ocular flutter coming on again. So with that, we decided to treat him with immune therapy, causes of immunoglobulins, after which he started recovering both his neurological status as well as some of his eye movements. So now you can see that after head shaking, instead of the downward dipping, just the downward phase, there will be a recovery up phase. So now it's classic dipping. You'll see in a minute, you'll see a classic dipping. It goes down and then pop, it comes up. Pop, it comes up. Pop, it comes up. So we continued with our immunoglobulin therapy, and over a period of time, he slowly recovered his mental functions, as you can see. And then over a period of time with rehabilitation, he recovered most of his function except for his lower limbs. Very interestingly, his scans showed changes quite consistent with acute disseminated encephalomyelitis. You can see many white matter changes on T2 images, as well as DWI changes without corresponding ADC changes, which suggests that this is inflammatory demyelination rather than ischemia. And interestingly, he also had a similar lesion in the spinal cord. Spinal fluid was remarkable for a small number of cells and slightly raised protein. Now, more recently, this is just a few months ago, we had another patient. As you can see again, he has got the classic ocular flutter that we saw in the other patient. You can see a few beats of left, right, end-to-end saccades without intersaccadic intervals. In addition, this patient was much more classical because he went on to develop the, the myoclonus of the opsoclonus myoclonus syndrome. Okay, if the video, the video is not done. I'll just make it a bit faster. So you can see it's got a typical opsoclonus myoclonus syndrome. So this patient again had severe COVID in spite of his vaccination. And we went on to treat him with immunoglobulins. Without good response, we went on to tocilizumab. And then finally, he went through a series of plasma exchange. And I must say that eventually he recovered quite well. Very interestingly, his neighboring patient, I was struggling with this patient. And another interesting manifestation of this patient is that if you look at his eyebrows very closely, he has got what we would refer to in movement disorders as a myorrhythmia. See the slow upward and downward movement of his eyelids. Can you see his eyebrows going up and then down, up and then down, up and then down. And similarly, he had similar movements in his arms. This is another patient next to him, actually, who had very similar manifestations of ocular flutter, myoclonus of his limbs, and myorrhythmia of his face. Again, a patient that responded well to immunoglobulins. And as you know, this has been well described by many groups around the world. So encephalopathy is common in patients who are sick in ICU. But if you see specific features like myoclonus, if you see specific features like opsoclonus, if you see specific features like ocular flutter, then we are obliged to treat them with immunomodulatory therapy because this improves the outcome. That is the message I would like to transmit with this. Very interestingly, last year when we were studying all our COVID vaccine patients, we had a patient who also had ocular flutter a few weeks after getting mRNA vaccine. And he went on to develop what looked like a brainstem meningoencephalitis. And very interestingly, his GFAP, CSF GFAP antibody was positive. So it appears that immune phenomenon is common both in, it's common in COVID vaccine, but maybe in a small fraction of patients, we also see a similar sort of pathology in the vaccinated patients. Now, then we saw a couple of patients, a few patients who had what I refer to as localized dysautonomia. So I'd like to describe these three patients because they'll be of quite significant interest to you. The first patient is a patient who, on discovery of his COVID, he was quite minimally asymptomatic. minimally symptomatic. At that point, when the quarantine officer gave him his quarantine documents, he said he couldn't read the quarantine documents well. So at that point, of course, everyone thought that he was probably either hysterical or something of that sort. And then we later on realized that he actually had a small pupil that was fairly well reactive to light, but poorly reactive to near vision. So what I refer to as the inverse Agar-Robertson pupil. The second patient had a more classical Agar-Robertson pupil, and the third patient is what I'm showing here, had a classic Holmes-Adey pupil. As you can see here, his reaction to light is not as good as his accommodation response. So again, these three patients told us that there is a possible immune-mediated reaction to the COVID. And of course, this is another patient that I saw way before COVID when I was visiting a hospital in Peshawar, where many of the children are not well vaccinated. So this is a girl who came in with diphtheria, and true enough, she had a classic manifestation of an inverse Agar-Robertson pupil. Again, a post-infectious process. So a combination of these cases, as well as those cases reported in the literature, after varicella, as well as after tetanus, as well as after diphtheria, patients can develop various forms of light near dissociation of the pupils. And the theory is that there is segmental demyelination of the ciliary nerve, so that some aspects of the sympathetic, parasympathetic, the parasympathetic nerves are affected. So most of the time, it is the light fibers that are affected, but occasionally you can get a predominant accommodation reflex affliction, so that you can get inverse Agar-Robertson pupil. So none of these patients required any treatment. As I mentioned before, they were all very well patients. So eventually we supported them, we observed them with good recovery. Okay. As I was mentioning before, we didn't see anything as much in terms of side effects as far as the COVID vaccines were concerned. So I would like to reiterate what Dr. Lee was saying, that COVID infection seems to be a much more disimmune process than any of the things that we saw in a post-vaccine. So we only saw a handful of patients with very mild sort of inflammatory processes that came on after mRNA vaccines. With that, I would like to thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the attention. And I would like to pause here for any discussion and comments. Thank you.
Yes, that was a wonderful talk, Doctor, and it was really a treat to hear you. I would just veer to a little different question. What could be the possible mechanisms for a trigger of ocular myasthenia gravis in these COVID patients?
Yeah, I think myasthenia gravis, of all the immunological disorders, is a little bit more tricky when it comes to COVID, because it's a double whammy, isn't it? So firstly, it affects your immune system. Secondly, it is an infection that triggers off myasthenia anyway. So, many of our myasthenic patients, we often see them coming in when they get an influenza. So we used to routinely vaccinate all our patients for pneumococcal and influenza to prevent them from getting exacerbation. So likewise, COVID is a double whammy, in the sense that itself affects the immune system and causes predilection for the immune system to flare up again. In addition, the fact that it's a respiratory infection is going to trigger worsening of the myasthenia. So that's the feeling that most of us are getting. When it comes to the vaccine, on the other hand, although there's a lot of noise about it, we are not totally convinced that it is that much of an issue. So we still tell our patients that the COVID infection is going to be much, much more serious than any side effect that you can get from COVID vaccines.
Yes, it's very true. Murli, some questions?
Yeah, Dr. Umapathy, you had presented a lot of patients with autoimmune disorders of the nervous system after COVID-19 vaccination. So naturally, they would be treated with either immunomodulators or steroids. But here we have seen a lot of patients with mucormycosis, which have been blamed on these indiscriminate use of immunomodulators or steroids. Did you face a similar experience? I mean, how common was mucormycosis in Singapore?
Yeah, it's very interesting, sir. I think I just want to clarify that I reiterate my message that almost all the patients that I showed you today are all post-COVID, and only the GFAP patient is post-COVID vaccine. Yes, all these COVID patients who developed an immune process post COVID, we had this problem, right? We had this problem because, like this man that I was showing you, I couldn't use high dose steroids because recurrent pseudomonas, Klebsiella, and all kind of infections. Okay. Now, muco was not that much of a problem for us. We're not sure why exactly, especially in the first wave. Now, we saw more muco in the second wave, in the Delta wave, where we had Delta patients, in the Delta COVID infection patients, because we had more older patients. But still, it didn't seem to be as big a problem as it was in India. But your point is absolutely right. So that's why you notice that a lot of our patients were given a milder form of immune suppression, like IVIG, plasma exchange, which is another very innocuous in terms of inducing immune deficiency. And we also chose some monoclonals like tocilizumab, like, the last patient that I showed you with encephalitis, we actually used tocilizumab because we feel that it is the interleukin-6 cytokine storm that is inducing all this problem. So rather than kill out all the immune system, why don't we go straight for the interleukin-6 pathways? So your point is absolutely right. So we have to be very careful and use the proper immune treatment that the patient's condition can tolerate.
Thank you.
We see mononeuropathies, and COVID may just be incidental. So like, a 40-year-old patient who comes with acute sixth nerve palsy, the MRI with contrast being absolutely normal, or I have seen one patient with fourth nerve palsy also. This again in the middle to young age patients. So, I mean, what would be your take? Is COVID-19 just an incidental, or would you postulate an etiological role for COVID-19 in these ischemic mononeuropathies? And should we be careful with steroids? Normally, we would have treated with steroids if MRI was normal and there was nothing else like diabetes or any other atherosclerotic risk factors. Now we are, very much cautious while giving oral steroids to these patients. So your take, Dr. Mahapati?
Well, I think I must confess that as I showed you in my the data just now, we didn't see that many cranial neuropathies post-COVID. So I don't have any personal experience, but I can imagine that some of them may be due to coexistent disease, especially when COVID is such a big problem in the country, when you have a big surge. But I can imagine that there will be a subgroup of patients who have an immunomodulatory sort of disimmune sort of a process, So it is, I think it's beholden on us to be very careful to sieve out these patients and then consider treatment, but knowing that the treatment is not without any side effects. So therefore, a considered view would be important. But I must say that there will be many people in the audience who are more experienced in this than me. So I would like to get their opinion too. Thank you.
We do. I just have one comment. We do have a lot of cranial mononeuropathies, especially Bell's palsy after the COVID, and also the third and fourth nerve palsy, sixth nerve palsy, typical acute polyneuropathy like Guillain-Barré syndrome. Interesting fact is that the Guillain-Barré syndrome did respond to the steroids. Normally, there is no role of steroids in Guillain-Barré, but the immune process is such that after the COVID, they do have an acute polyneuropathy. They responded very well. Transverse myelitis. So we do see the wide spectrum of the disorders of post-COVID infection.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.